ScriptLogic's Enterprise Security Reporter solution is your single point for information on security and auditing in a Windows environment. Enterprise Security Reporter documents permissions on the widest variety of Windows security settings and allows complete customizable reports to be easily built. Everything from NTFS security to group memberships is easily discoverable. In this brief demonstration, I'll show you how to gather and report on the most important aspects of Windows security. Well, as we all know, one of the biggest challenges facing administrators is finding out who can access what. Whether this is users who need to have access to file servers, or because of Sarbanes-Oxley, or GLBA, or any other kind of legislatively mandated reporting and auditing requirements, trying to find out who has access to what resources is almost impossible in a Windows environment without an application like Enterprise Security Reporter. What this does for us is it allows us to take this information throughout our environment and place it into a centralized database that we can easily run reports against. So the first part of this is discovering that information. In my case here, I've selected an Active Directory domain and a single domain controller from that domain that I want to gather information about my domain accounts, my sites, my trust relationships, my domain controllers, domain computers, organizational units, and I want to synchronize last logon information. I can also gather information about attributes on various objects, whether it's users, groups, what have you. I can discover this information for use later in my reporting. I can also quite simply discover information under certain organizational units. So if I'm only looking for computers and users under a certain OU, I can do that. So you don't necessarily have to be an enterprise admin to use this tool effectively. I can also gather information about computers. So for any of the computers in my environment, I can add them to this list and then choose exactly what I want to discover from them, whether it's local accounts, printers, shares, volumes, folders, and the permissions. I can gather information about permissions on all of these resources, as well as combine these with my domain information to get effective reports. I can also choose to include or exclude certain paths on my file servers. So if I only wanted to look at a subset of my file server for compliance reasons, I could do so in this. Now, one of the new features that we have is a discovery group. What discovery group lets us do is organize things like, in my case, file servers into a grouping and then being able to select en masse what I actually want to discover from them. So the larger your environment, the more easily you can make this product fit. Then we can actually, again, discover those pieces, or we can actually schedule that to run later. So in my case, I've already run a couple of different discoveries, and I can see very quickly what the status was. It was discovered, it was finished, shows me what was scanned, how long it took. So in this case here, it only took a few minutes for me to gather information about my environment. What I'm going to do though now is go to the second aspect of the product, and that's the reporting console. This is where we've had the most flexibility in this product. Enterprise Security Reporter has always provided the ability to run reports about access controls to resources, but this new version has greatly enhanced that. First and foremost, I'm looking at all of the recent reports that have been run on this particular computer. Now, all of these are built in except for this test one that I've created, which is a sample report, and I'll show you how to create those as well. Under my Global Reports options, I have a list of all of the different report categories and all of the reports within them. So it could be anything from information about the accounts in my domain, to the computer accounts in my domain, information about computer IP addresses, computer policies, how event logs are configured, information about my files, when they were created, when they were last accessed, when they were modified, information about my folders. So folder size reports, something very widely asked for in this new version, is now part of this. Local accounts, ownership, who owns what resources in my environment, permissions. This is greatly enhanced now in version 3 to include explicit and inherited permissions and various different reports on those, where different groups and users are denied access. Information too about the differences between parent and child folders, explicit permissions that have been granted in my network, and also information about files and folders with permissions for selected accounts. So we can actually quite simply go in, specify a few different parameters, and get the information we're looking for. Also, we provide information about file shares, information about services, and printers. So let's say, for instance, that you want to find out all shares where everyone has full control. You can do so very easily here. Or let me know all the public shares that are available on each computer. That's also a built-in report. New for version 3, delta permissions. In this case, they're delta snapshots. Previously, we could compare the permissions from parent to child folder. Now we can compare the permissions from one data set to another data set. So in my case, I can look at changes to accounts, event log changes, file and folder changes, NTFS permission changes, service and file share changes. I can also gather information about my discoveries that I've run, how group memberships are configured, both for domain groups, which we see here, as well as for local groups on our servers, and then user reports. So things like password reports, passwords that do or do not expire, users who can and cannot change their passwords, information about when accounts are actually going to expire, disabled domain user accounts, locked domain user accounts, users who have or have not logged in the last 10 days. And we can do the same thing here with our local users. So the number of built-in reports in Enterprise Security Reporter 3 is staggering compared to what we had before. We provide reports for just about every single aspect of Windows security. Now what's new to this feature too is the way that we actually handle these reports. So let's take a report here. Let's look at, in this case, account expiration report by account. When I double click this, it brings up the actual parameters for this. So now I can look at this and say, first and foremost, what do I want to look at? It's asking me for a fully qualified domain name. So I'm going to select, in my case, demo.local. I'm going to add this to my list, and I'm going to click Finish. So the software now is going to go out to my database, and it's going to tell me all of the different accounts that expire and when they expire in my environment.